Once upon a time, in a small village nestled deep in the mountains, there was a wise old woman known for her kindness and generosity. She lived alone in a humble cottage and spent her days making candles by hand, which she would then distribute to the villagers. One day, a young boy came to her cottage and asked her why she spent so much time making candles when she could simply buy them from the market like everyone else. The old woman smiled and replied, "My dear child, a candle lights others and consumes itself. In the same way, we should strive to bring light and warmth to others, even if it means sacrificing a little of ourselves." The young boy was puzzled by her words but went home with a newfound appreciation for the old woman's wisdom. Years passed, and the boy grew up to become a successful businessman. He amassed great wealth and lived a comfortable life, but he felt that something was missing. He remembered the old woman's words and decided to use his wealth to help others. He started a charity organization that provided food, clothing, and shelter to those in need. He also volunteered at soup kitchens and homeless shelters, always bringing a warm smile and a kind word to those he met. As he gave more and more of himself to others, the boy began to feel a sense of fulfillment and purpose that he had never felt before. He realized that the old woman's words were true, that giving to others was the true path to happiness. One day, as he was distributing food and blankets to the homeless, he saw a group of children huddled together in the cold. He remembered the old woman's candles and decided to buy hundreds of them to distribute to the children. As he handed out the candles, he saw the children's faces light up with joy and warmth. He knew that the old woman's wisdom had come full circle. His act of kindness had lit up the lives of others, just like the candles the old woman had made. And so, the boy continued to give and give, never forgetting the lessons he had learned from the wise old woman. He knew that a candle lights others and consumes itself, but he also knew that the light it brings can last forever. In another land, there was a great king who ruled over a prosperous kingdom. The king was known for his wealth and power, but he was also known for his kindness and compassion towards his people. One day, the king received news that a neighboring kingdom was under attack from a powerful enemy army. The king knew that he had to help his neighbors, so he gathered his army and set out to defend them. For many weeks, the king's army fought bravely against the enemy forces. They were outnumbered and outmatched, but they fought with all their might. In the end, they were victorious, but at a great cost. Many of the king's soldiers had been killed, and the kingdom was left in ruins. The king knew that he had to rebuild his kingdom, but he also knew that he could not do it alone. He called upon his advisors and asked them for their help. One of his advisors, a wise old man, spoke up and said, "Your Majesty, a candle lights others and consumes itself. In the same way, we must be willing to sacrifice for the greater good." The king was intrigued by the old man's words and asked him to explain. The old man replied, "Your Majesty, we must all be willing to give of ourselves for the good of the kingdom. We must work tirelessly to rebuild what was lost and to ensure that our people are safe and prosperous. It may be difficult, but it is the right thing to do." The king was inspired by the old man's wisdom and decided to follow his advice. He called upon his people and asked him to join him in the effort to rebuild the kingdom. Together, they worked tirelessly, day and night, to repair the damage caused by the war. The king himself led the efforts, working alongside his people and sharing in their hardships. He realized that, like the old man had said, a candle lights others and consumes itself. He was willing to sacrifice his own comfort and well-being for the sake of his kingdom and his people. As the months went by, the kingdom slowly began to recover. The people were filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing that they had worked together to overcome great adversity. The king was amazed by the resilience and determination of his people. He knew that he could never have done it alone. He realized that true leadership was not about power or wealth, but about serving others and leading by example. In the end, the kingdom emerged from the ruins stronger and more united than ever before. The king knew that it was all thanks to the wisdom of the old man and the power of the simple yet profound phrase, "A candle lights others and consumes itself." In yet another land, there was a young woman named Anna who lived in a small village with her family. Anna was known for her beauty and her kindness, and many of the village's young men were in love with her. One day, a terrible plague swept through the village, killing many of its inhabitants. Anna's family was among the victims, and Anna herself fell ill with the disease. As she lay in bed, coughing and gasping for breath, Anna realized that her time on earth was coming to an end. She thought about all the things she had wanted to do in her life, to travel, to fall in love, to make a difference in the world, and realized that she would never have the chance to do any of them. But then, Anna remembered something her mother had told her when she was a child. Anna, her mother had said, "A candle lights others and consumes itself. Always be willing to give of yourself for the good of others, and you will never be forgotten." Anna realized that her mother's words were true. She may not have the chance to do all the things she had wanted to do, but she could still make a difference in the world by giving of herself. Anna began to rally the other sick villagers, urging them to help each other and to care for one another. She used what little strength she had to tend to the sick and to comfort the dying. Despite her illness, Anna's beauty and kindness shone through. She became a source of hope and inspiration to the other villagers, and her selflessness touched the hearts of all who knew her. In the end, Anna herself succumbed to the disease, but her legacy lived on. The other villagers remembered her as a shining example of selflessness and kindness. Her mother's words had come true: a candle lights others and consumes itself, and Anna had lit up the lives of those around her until the very end. In a distant land, there lived a wealthy merchant named Ahmed who had built his fortune through hard work and cunning business deals. He lived a life of luxury and extravagance, surrounded by all the material possessions he could ever want. Despite his wealth and success, Ahmed was unhappy. He felt that something was missing in his life, and he could not shake the feeling that he had not lived up to his full potential. One day, Ahmed was approached by a wise old sage who had heard of his troubles. The sage told Ahmed the story of a candle that lights others and consumes itself. Ahmed was intrigued by the story and asked the sage to explain its meaning. The sage replied, "You have built your wealth and success by taking from others. But true success and happiness come from giving to others. Just like the candle, you must be willing to give of yourself, even if it means sacrificing your own comfort and desires." Ahmed was deeply moved by the sage's words. He realized that he had been living his life all wrong. He had been so focused on accumulating wealth and material possessions that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. Determined to change his ways, Ahmed began to give back to his community. He used his wealth to build schools, hospitals, and community centers for the less fortunate. He also mentored young entrepreneurs and helped him to build successful businesses of their own. As Ahmed gave more of himself, he began to feel a sense of fulfillment and purpose that he had never experienced before. He realized that true happiness came from helping others and making a positive impact in the world. Years later, when Ahmed passed away, he was remembered not for his wealth and success, but for his generosity and compassion. The people of his community honored him as a shining example of how a candle lights others and consumes itself. In a small village in the mountains, there lived a young girl named May. May was known throughout the village for her kindness and her willingness to help others. One day, a terrible storm swept through the village, destroying many of the houses and leaving the villagers in desperate need of help. May knew that she had to do something to help her neighbors. She gathered all the candles she could find and went from house to house, offering them to the villagers. She also used what little food and water she had to feed the hungry and give water to the thirsty. As the days passed, May continued to help her neighbors in any way she could. She worked tirelessly, never stopping to rest or to think of her own needs. In the end, May became sick from exhaustion and lack of food. She knew that her time was limited, but she did not regret her actions. She knew that she had helped her neighbors when they needed it most, and that was all that mattered. May passed away peacefully, surrounded by the villagers she had helped. They lit candles in her memory, and they told stories of her selflessness and kindness for years to come. May had truly embodied the spirit of the candle that lights others and consumes itself, and her legacy lived on in the hearts of all who knew her. In a kingdom ruled by a wise and just king, there was a young prince named Arjun who was known for his arrogance and selfishness. He cared only for his own pleasure and had little regard for the needs and desires of others. One day, the king summoned Arjun to his chambers and presented him with a small candle. The king said, "This candle represents the responsibility that comes with your position as prince. You have been given great power and privilege, but with that comes a duty to use your power for the greater good. You must be like this candle, which gives light to others while consuming itself." At first, Arjun scoffed at the king's words. He believed that he was entitled to all the luxuries and pleasures of life and that he owed nothing to anyone. But as he looked at the candle, something began to stir within him. He realized that he had been living his life all wrong. Over the next few weeks, Arjun began to change. He spent time with the people of his kingdom, listening to their concerns and doing what he could to help them. He used his influence to make positive changes in the kingdom, such as building schools and hospitals for the less fortunate. As Arjun gave more of himself, he began to feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment that he had never experienced before. He realized that true greatness came not from power and privilege, but from using that power to help others. Years later, when Arjun became king, he remembered the lesson of the candle. He ruled with compassion and wisdom, always putting the needs of his people first. He became known as one of the greatest kings in the history of the kingdom, and his legacy lived on long after his death. In a small village in the countryside, there lived a young woman named Anna who was known for her kindness and generosity. She had very little in terms of material possessions, but she was always willing to share what little she had with those in need. One day, Anna came across an elderly man who was lost and alone. The man was hungry and cold, and Anna knew that she had to help him. She took him into her home and offered him food and warmth. As the days passed, Anna continued to care for the old man, despite her own eager resources. One night, as Anna was tending to the man, she noticed that her candle was burning low. She knew that she had no more candles left, and she could not afford to buy any more. But Anna did not despair. Instead, she took the candle and used it to light the old man's way as he slept. The candle burned brightly, illuminating the small room and casting a warm glow over the man's face. As Anna watched the candle burn down to nothing, she realized the true meaning of the phrase, "A candle lights others and consumes itself." She had given all that she had to help the old man, and in doing so, she had lit a flame of kindness and compassion in his heart that would burn long after the candle had gone out. Anna continued to live a life of service and compassion, using what little she had to help those in need. Her candle may have burned out, but the light of her love and kindness shone brightly in the hearts of all who knew her. In a bustling city, there was a successful businessman named David who had achieved great wealth and power. He was known for his cutthroat tactics and ruthless ambition, and many feared him. One day, David received a call from his mother, who was terminally ill. She had always been a kind and gentle woman, and David was overcome with emotion at the thought of losing her. He rushed to her side and spent the remaining weeks of her life caring for her. As he watched her slip away, he realized that all of his wealth and power meant nothing in the face of death. He knew that he needed to change his ways and find a deeper meaning in life. David decided to use his wealth and influence to make a positive difference in the world. He founded a charitable organization that provided food, shelter, and education to those in need. He donated large sums of money to medical research and environmental causes. As he gave more and more of himself, David realized that he was no longer the ruthless businessman he once was. He had become like a candle, lighting the way for others while consuming himself. Years later, when David was an old man, he reflected on his life and felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. He knew that he had made a positive difference in the world, and that his legacy would live on long after he was gone. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there was a group of monks who lived a simple and humble life. They spent their days in prayer and meditation, seeking enlightenment and a deeper understanding of the world. One of the monks, a young man named Tenzin, was known for his gentle spirit and kind heart. He spent his days in quiet contemplation, seeking to understand the true nature of the world and his place in it. One day, a group of travelers came through the village, seeking refuge from a storm. Tenzin welcomed them into the monastery and offered them food and shelter. As the night wore on, Tenzin noticed that the travelers had very little light to see by. He offered them his own candle, which he had been using to read by, knowing that it would be of more use to them. The travelers were grateful for Tenzin's kindness, and they spoke of it to others as they traveled on. Soon, word of Tenzin's selflessness spread throughout the land, and people came from far and wide to seek his guidance and wisdom. Tenzin continued to live a simple and humble life, always putting the needs of others before his own. He became known as a wise and compassionate teacher, and his candle continued to light the way for others long after it had burned down to nothing. In a small town by the sea, there lived a young girl named Lily. She had always been fascinated by the beauty of the ocean and spent much of her time exploring the shoreline and collecting seashells. One day, while walking along the beach, Lily came across a small, flickering candle that had been washed up on shore. She picked it up and noticed that it was still burning, despite being battered by the waves and wind. Lily decided to take the candle home and care for it, hoping to keep the flame alive for as long as possible. She placed the candle in a special spot in her room and watched as it continued to burn bright. As the days went by, Lily noticed that the candle had a unique quality. It seemed to give off a warm and comforting light that made her feel at peace. She began to light the candle every evening, letting its gentle glow fill her room. One day, Lily's friend Sophie came over to visit. Sophie had been going through a difficult time and was feeling sad and alone. Lily noticed her friend's sadness and decided to share the light of the candle with her. She lit the candle and placed it between them, and they sat quietly in its warm glow. As they talked and shared their thoughts and feelings, Lily noticed that the flame of the candle seemed to grow brighter and stronger. She realized that the candle was like a beacon of hope, spreading its light and warmth to others while consuming itself. From that day on, Lily made it her mission to share the light of the candle with others, hoping to bring comfort and joy to those who needed it most. Years later, as an old woman, Lily looked back on her life with a sense of gratitude and fulfillment. She knew that she had made a difference in the world, and that the simple act of sharing the light of a candle had brought hope and happiness to countless people. In a quiet village nestled in the forest, there lived a wise old man named Wren. He was known throughout the land for his sage advice and deep understanding of the natural world. One day, a group of travelers came to the village seeking Wren's guidance. They were a diverse group, from all walks of life, but they shared a common goal: to learn the secrets of the universe and find true enlightenment. Wren welcomed the travelers into his home and shared his wisdom with them. He spoke of the interconnectedness of all things and the balance that existed in nature. He taught them how to listen to the wind and the trees, and how to find peace and harmony within themselves. As the days went by, the travelers began to feel a sense of peace and clarity that they had never experienced before. They knew that they had found a true master, one who could help them on their journey to enlightenment. One night, as they sat by the fire, Wren pulled out a small, flickering candle and placed it in the center of the group. He explained that the candle was like a symbol of the universe, with its light representing the interconnectedness of all things. As they sat in silence, watching the flame dance, Wren spoke of the importance of giving of oneself. He explained that like the candle, one must be willing to consume oneself in order to light the way for others. The travelers were moved by Wren's words and began to see the world in a new light. They realized that true enlightenment was not about attaining knowledge or power, but about giving of oneself to help others. Years later, as the travelers went their separate ways, they remembered Wren and the candle that had taught them so much. They knew that the light of the candle would continue to guide them on their journey, and that the wisdom of Wren would stay with them always. In a bustling city filled with noise and chaos, there lived a young woman named Maya. She worked long hours at a small shop in the heart of the city, selling trinkets and souvenirs to tourists. Despite the constant noise and commotion, Maya remained calm and centered. She had a special gift, a quiet strength that she drew upon to keep herself grounded amidst the chaos of the city. One day, Maya's boss gave her a small candle as a gift. It was a simple candle, made of beeswax and scented with lavender. Maya took it home and lit it that evening, marveling at its warm and calming glow. As she watched the candle burn, Maya had a revelation. She realized that the candle was like a symbol of herself, of the quiet strength that she carried within her. She knew that like the candle, she had the power to light the way for others, to help them find peace and calm amidst the chaos of the world. From that day on, Maya began to live her life with a renewed sense of purpose. She approached each day with a sense of calm and centeredness, knowing that she had the power to help others find the same. As she worked at the shop, Maya began to share the light of the candle with others. She would light it and place it on the counter, letting its gentle glow fill the room. Customers would come in, stressed and hurried, and they would leave feeling calm and centered, thanks to the simple light of the candle. Over time, Maya's reputation grew. She became known as the woman with the calming presence, the one who could help others find peace amidst the chaos of the city. As she grew older, Maya continued to light the candle and share its light with others. She knew that it was her calling, her purpose in life. And though the candle consumed itself, its light continued to shine on, a symbol of Maya's quiet strength and the power of a simple act of kindness. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a young boy named Taro. Taro was a kind and compassionate child, always willing to help others in need. One day, a terrible storm swept through the village, knocking out the power and plunging the town into darkness. Taro's family huddled together, trying to stay warm and safe amidst the chaos. As the night wore on, Taro realized that his neighbors were in trouble. Many of them had no light, no way to see in the darkness. He knew that he had to do something to help. Taro searched through his home and found a small, flickering candle. He lit it and placed it in the window, hoping that its light would guide his neighbors to safety. As he watched the candle burn, Taro had a realization. He realized that the candle was like a symbol of his own life. He knew that like the candle, he had the power to light the way for others, to help them find safety and comfort amidst the darkness of life. With a renewed sense of purpose, Taro set out into the storm. He went from house to house, sharing the light of his candle with others. His neighbors were amazed by his kindness and bravery, and they soon began to follow in his footsteps, sharing their own candles and lanterns with those in need. As the night wore on, the village began to come together. People huddled together, sharing their warmth and light, and the darkness that had once seemed so frightening began to feel less daunting. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The storm passed, but Taro's actions had left a lasting impact on the village. People began to see themselves as part of a community, a group of individuals who could come together to help one another in times of need. Years later, when Taro had grown old and grey, the village remembered him as a hero. They knew that his kindness and compassion had saved many lives that night, and that the light of his candle had inspired others to do the same. And though the candle had consumed itself, its light had shone brightly, guiding the way for others to follow. In a dark and dangerous forest, there lived a small group of animals. Among them was a wise old owl named Athena, who was known throughout the forest for her knowledge and wisdom. One day, a great fire broke out in the forest. The animals fled in all directions, desperate to escape the flames. Athena flew through the forest, trying to help as many animals as she could. As she flew, Athena came across a small mouse who was huddled beneath a rock, shivering with fear. Athena knew that she had to do something to help. She searched through the forest, looking for something to help guide the mouse to safety. Finally, she found a small candle, flickering in the wind. She took it in her talons and flew back to the mouse, placing the candle beside him. As the candle burned, Athena had a realization. She realized that the candle was like a symbol of her own life. She knew that like the candle, she had the power to light the way for others, to help guide them through the darkness of life. With renewed purpose, Athena flew through the forest, sharing the light of the candle with others. She guided animals to safety, using the light of the candle to show them the way. As the fire raged on, Athena continued to fly, the candle burning brightly in her talons. And though it consumed itself, its light continued to shine on, guiding others to safety and leading them out of the darkness of the forest. Years later, when the forest had regrown and the animals had returned, they remembered Athena as a hero. They knew that her bravery and selflessness had saved many lives that day, and that the light of the candle had inspired others to do the same. And though the candle had consumed itself, its light had shone brightly, guiding the way for others to follow and showing them the power of a single act of kindness. In a distant kingdom, there lived a young prince named Liam. Liam was a kind and compassionate boy who always put the needs of others before his own. One day, as Liam was walking through the city, he noticed that many of the people were living in poverty. They had no homes, no food, and no way to provide for themselves. Liam knew that he had to do something to help. He approached his father, the king, and asked for permission to use the kingdom's resources to help the people in need. But the king refused. He believed that the people should help themselves, and that it was not the kingdom's responsibility to care for them. Determined to make a difference, Liam decided to take matters into his own hands. He sold his own belongings and used the money to buy candles, which he distributed to the people in need. As the people received the candles, they were amazed by Liam's kindness and generosity. They used the candles to light their homes, and soon the entire city was filled with the warm glow of candlelight. But Liam knew that the candles were not enough. He needed to do more to help the people in need. So he continued to sell his own belongings, using the money to buy food, clothing, and shelter for those who were struggling. As he worked tirelessly to help others, Liam had a realization. He realized that he was like a candle, lighting the way for others to follow. He knew that his actions were consuming him, but he also knew that they were making a difference in the lives of those he was helping. Years passed, and Liam grew older. He continued to work tirelessly to help others, even as his own health began to decline. And when he passed away, the people of the kingdom remembered him as a hero. They knew that his kindness and compassion had saved many lives, and that the light of his candle had inspired others to do the same. Though Liam had consumed himself in his efforts to help others, his light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing him the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. In a small village in the mountains, there lived a young woman named May. May was known throughout the village for her kindness and generosity, always putting the needs of others before her own. One winter, a terrible blizzard swept through the mountains, burying the village in snow and cutting them off from the outside world. The villagers struggled to survive in the freezing temperatures, with many of them falling ill and dying from the harsh conditions. May knew that she had to do something to help. She used the last of her savings to buy candles and distributed them to the villagers, knowing that the warmth of the candles would help them stay alive. As the candles burned, May had a realization. She realized that she was like a candle, lighting the way for others to follow. She knew that her actions were consuming her, but she also knew that they were making a difference in the lives of those she was helping. Despite the danger and the harsh conditions, May continued to work tirelessly to help the villagers. She used her knowledge of herbs and medicines to heal the sick and comfort the dying, never giving up hope that they would survive. As the blizzard raged on, May's candle continued to burn brightly, providing light and warmth for the villagers in the darkest of times. And though it consumed itself, its light continued to shine on, guiding others to safety and leading them out of the darkness of the storm. In the end, the blizzard passed and the villagers survived. They remembered May as a hero, who had selflessly sacrificed herself to save others. They knew that her bravery and compassion had inspired them to work together to overcome the storm and to always remember the power of a single act of kindness. May's candle may have consumed itself, but its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing them the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. In a bustling city, there lived a man named William. William was a successful businessman who had worked hard to build his fortune. But despite his success, he felt unfulfilled and empty inside. One day, William stumbled upon a charity event where he saw firsthand the impact that a single act of kindness could have on others. He knew that he had to do something to make a difference in the world. He began to use his wealth and resources to help those in need, donating to charities and volunteering at homeless shelters. As he continued to work tirelessly to help others, he had a realization. He realized that he was like a candle, lighting the way for others to follow. He knew that his actions were consuming him, but he also knew that they were making a difference in the lives of those he was helping. As William's candle burned brighter, he became more and more consumed by his desire to help others. He sold his luxurious home and moved into a small apartment, using the money to fund more charitable causes. Despite the sacrifices he made, William found himself feeling more fulfilled and alive than ever before. He knew that he was making a difference in the world, and that his actions were helping to improve the lives of others. But as William's candle continued to burn, it began to consume him. He worked long hours, neglecting his health and relationships with friends and family. As his health began to decline, he knew that he had to slow down and take care of himself. In his final days, William looked back on his life with pride and satisfaction. He knew that he had made a difference in the world, and that his light had inspired others to do the same. Though his candle had consumed itself, its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing him the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. The people who had been touched by William's kindness and generosity would never forget the impact that he had made on their lives. They knew that he had shown them the true power of a single act of kindness and that his legacy would continue to inspire others to make a difference in the world. In a small village on the edge of a dense forest, there lived a young woman named Elena. Elena was a skilled artisan who had a talent for creating beautiful candles. Her candles were known throughout the village for their exquisite designs and the warm, inviting glow that they emitted. One day, a terrible storm swept through the village, causing a massive fire that destroyed many of the homes and businesses. The villagers were devastated, and they struggled to rebuild their lives from the ruins of the disaster. Elena knew that she had to do something to help. She used her skills to create hundreds of candles and distributed them to the villagers, knowing that the warmth and light would help them rebuild and recover. As the villagers lit the candles, Elena had a realization. She realized that she was like a candle, lighting the way for others to follow. She knew that her actions were consuming her, but she also knew that they were making a difference in the lives of those she was helping. Despite the danger and the harsh conditions, Elena continued to work tirelessly to help the villagers. She used her creativity and talent to help rebuild the village, creating beautiful and functional pieces that would bring a sense of normalcy back to their lives. As Elena's candle burned brighter, she became more and more consumed by her desire to help others. She worked long hours, neglecting her own needs and desires in the process. But as time went on, Elena began to feel burnt out and exhausted. She knew that she had to take care of herself if she was going to continue to help others. So she took a step back and focused on her own needs, taking time to rest and recharge her batteries. In the end, the village was rebuilt, and the villagers had recovered from the disaster. They remembered Elena as a hero, who had selflessly sacrificed herself to save others. They knew that her bravery and creativity had inspired them to work together to overcome the disaster and to always remember the power of a single act of kindness. Elena's candle may have consumed itself, but its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing them the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. And though Elena had to take time to focus on herself, she knew that her candle would continue to burn bright, inspiring others to follow in her footsteps and make a difference in the world. In a small village in a distant land, there lived a young girl named Amira. Amira was a kind and compassionate soul who always put the needs of others before her own. She spent her days helping those in need and spreading kindness wherever she went. One day, a powerful warlord swept through the village, leaving destruction and chaos in his wake. Amira knew that she had to do something to help, so she used her skills to create hundreds of candles and distributed them to the villagers, knowing that the warmth and light would bring hope and comfort to those who had lost everything. As the villagers lit the candles, Amira had a realization. She realized that she was like a candle, lighting the way for others to follow. She knew that her actions were consuming her, but she also knew that they were making a difference in the lives of those she was helping. Despite the danger and the uncertainty, Amira continued to work tirelessly to help the villagers. She used her creativity and resourcefulness to provide food, shelter, and medical care to those in need. As Amira's candle burned brighter, she became more and more consumed by her desire to help others. She worked long hours, neglecting her own needs and putting herself in danger to help those around her. But as the warlord's grip on the village began to loosen, Amira's candle began to flicker. She had exhausted herself, and her body and spirit were weary from the constant strain. In her final days, Amira looked back on her life with pride and satisfaction. She knew that she had made a difference in the world, and that her light had inspired others to do the same. Though her candle had consumed itself, its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing them the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. The people of the village would never forget the impact that Amira had made on their lives. They knew that she had shown them the true power of a single act of kindness and that her legacy would continue to inspire others to make a difference in the world. And though Amira was no longer with them, her candle would continue to burn bright, inspiring others to follow in her footsteps and to always remember the power of a single act of kindness. In a small town nestled in the mountains, there lived a woman named Sophia. Sophia was a successful businesswoman who had built a thriving candle-making company. But she was not content with just running a profitable business. She wanted to use her success to make a difference in the world. Sophia began to use her company's resources to help those in need, donating a portion of her profits to local charities and organizations. She also started a program where her company would hire refugees and give them a chance to start a new life. As Sophia's candle burned brighter, she became more and more consumed by her desire to make a difference. She worked long hours, pushing herself to grow her business and help those in need. But one day, Sophia was diagnosed with a rare illness. She knew that she had to take a step back and focus on her health, but she was worried about what would happen to her company and the people she was helping. Sophia took some time to reflect on her life and her legacy. She realized that she had been so focused on making a difference in the world that she had neglected her own needs and desires. But Sophia also realized that her candle had inspired others to follow in her footsteps. Her company's programs had helped countless people, and her commitment to giving back had touched the lives of many. As Sophia's candle began to flicker, she knew that her legacy would continue. Her company would continue to hire refugees and donate to local charities, and her employees would carry on her commitment to making a difference in the world. In her final days, Sophia took comfort in knowing that her candle had lit the way for others to follow. She had consumed herself in her desire to make a difference, but she had also inspired others to do the same. Sophia's candle may have burned out, but its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing them the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. And though Sophia was no longer with him, her candle would continue to inspire others to make a difference in the world. In a small village on the outskirts of a bustling city, there lived an old man named Ahmed. Ahmed had lived a long and fulfilling life, but he was now nearing the end of his journey. Ahmed had always been a wise and kind man who had spent his life helping those in need. He had built a reputation in the village as a source of guidance and comfort, and many people came to him for advice and wisdom. One day, a young girl came to Ahmed's home, seeking his help. She was struggling with a difficult problem and didn't know what to do. Ahmed listened to her story and offered her some wise advice that helped her to see her situation in a new light. The young girl was amazed by Ahmed's wisdom and kindness. She asked him how he had become so wise and selfless, and Ahmed replied with a simple story. When Ahmed was a young man, he had traveled to a far-off land in search of knowledge and understanding. While he was there, he met a wise old man who had taught him the importance of selflessness and sacrifice. The old man had given Ahmed a candle and told him to light it and hold it out in front of him. Ahmed did as he was told, and the old man then asked him to look at the candle. "What do you see?" he asked. Ahmed replied that he saw the candle's light illuminating the darkness. The old man nodded. The candle's light illuminates the darkness, but it also consumes the wax, sacrificing itself for the sake of others. Remember this lesson, my friend. To be a light for others, you must be willing to sacrifice yourself. Ahmed had taken this lesson to heart, and he had spent his life living it. He knew that his candle was burning low, but he also knew that its light had illuminated the path for others to follow. As Ahmed's candle began to flicker, he knew that his time was drawing near. But he was content, knowing that his legacy would continue through the people he had helped and the lessons he had taught. The young girl left Ahmed's home that day, inspired by his wisdom and his selflessness. She knew that she had been touched by something special, and that she had been given a gift that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. Ahmed's candle may have consumed itself, but its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing him the true meaning of selflessness and sacrifice. And though Ahmed was no longer with him, his candle would continue to inspire others to make a difference in the world. In a small town nestled in the heart of a vast forest, there lived a woman named Elena. Elena was a devoted mother who had raised 3 children on her own. She had struggled to make ends meet, but she had never lost her faith in the power of love and kindness. Elena had a small candle-making business that she had started to support her family. She had always been fascinated by the way candles could light up a room and bring comfort to those around them. One day, a young couple came to Elena's shop, seeking a special candle for their wedding ceremony. They wanted a candle that would symbolize the love and commitment they shared, and they knew that Elena would be able to create something truly special. Elena worked tirelessly to create the perfect candle for the young couple. She poured her heart and soul into the design, using the finest materials and taking great care with every detail. When the couple saw the finished candle, they were amazed. It was the most beautiful candle they had ever seen, and they knew that it would be a perfect symbol of their love. As the wedding ceremony began, Elena lit the candle and placed it at the center of the altar. The flame flickered and danced, casting a warm glow over the room. The young couple exchanged their vows, and as they did, they each took a candle and lit the wick from the flame of Elena's candle. The 2 candles burned brightly, symbolizing their love and commitment to each other. But as the ceremony continued, Elena's candle began to burn lower and lower. Elena knew that the flame would soon consume the candle, but she also knew that its light would continue to shine brightly in the hearts of the young couple. As the ceremony drew to a close, the young couple thanked Elena for the beautiful candle and for all the love and kindness she had shown them. They knew that her candle had not only lit up their ceremony but had also touched their hearts in a profound way. Elena's candle may have burned out, but its light had shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow and showing him the true power of love and kindness. And though Elena's candle was no longer with him, its light would continue to inspire others to create beautiful and meaningful moments in their lives. In a far-off land, there was a small village nestled in a valley surrounded by towering mountains. The people of the village were hard-working and close-knit, but they were also plagued by darkness. The village had no source of light, and as the sun set each evening, the darkness descended like a heavy cloak, making it difficult for people to see. One day, a young traveler came to the village. He was a kind and gentle man, with a warm smile and a heart full of love. He saw the struggles of the villagers and knew that he had to do something to help. The traveler went to the village elder and asked if there was anything he could do to bring light to the village. The elder thought for a moment and then told the traveler about an old legend. The legend spoke of a magical candle that had the power to light up the entire village. But the candle was said to be guarded by an evil dragon, and no one had ever been able to retrieve it. The traveler knew that this was his calling. He set out on a journey to find the dragon and retrieve the magical candle. He traveled for days through treacherous terrain, climbing mountains and crossing rivers, until he finally came face to face with the dragon. The dragon was fierce and terrible, with razor-sharp claws and a mouth full of sharp teeth. But the traveler was not afraid. He knew that he had a mission to complete, and he would not let fear stand in his way. The traveler approached the dragon and offered it a deal. He would give the dragon all of his possessions if the dragon would give him the magical candle. The dragon was intrigued by the traveler's bravery and agreed to the deal. The traveler handed over all of his possessions, and the dragon gave him the magical candle. The candle was small and unassuming, but the traveler could feel its power radiating through him. He returned to the village with the magical candle and lit it in the center of the town square. As soon as the candle was lit, the darkness was dispelled, and the village was bathed in a warm, golden light. The people of the village were amazed. They had never seen anything like it. They gathered around the candle and marveled at its beauty. But the traveler knew that the candle was not meant to be his alone. He realized that the candle had the power to light up not only the village but the entire world. So he began to share the candle with others, lighting the candles of his friends and neighbors and spreading the light of the magical candle throughout the land. As the traveler shared the candle, he realized that the candle was not just a source of light but a symbol of hope and love. The candle could light up the darkness and bring people together, reminding them that even in the darkest of times, there is always a source of light and love to guide them. And as the traveler shared the candle with others, he realized that the candle was lighting up not only others but also consuming himself, as he gave away his possessions and his time to bring light to others. In the end, the traveler knew that he had fulfilled his mission. He had brought light to the world, and in doing so, he had consumed himself in the process. But his light would continue to shine brightly, inspiring others to follow in his footsteps and bring hope and love to all those around them. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a young girl named Leela. Leela was kind and compassionate, always putting the needs of others before her own. She spent her days helping her neighbors and caring for the sick and elderly in her community. One day, while Leela was out gathering firewood, she stumbled upon a small, flickering candle lying in the dirt. She picked it up, curious about its dim light. As she held the candle in her hands, she felt a warmth spread through her body, and she knew that this candle was special. Leela took the candle back to her village and showed it to her neighbors. They were amazed by the light that the small candle produced and asked Leela where she had found it. Leela told them about the candle and how it had filled her with warmth and love. The villagers were impressed by Leela's kind heart and asked her to keep the candle, using it to light up their homes and hearts. Leela was thrilled to be able to share the light of the candle with her community. She would light the candle each evening, and it would cast a warm glow throughout the village, bringing comfort and hope to all who saw it. But as Leela shared the candle with others, she realized that the candle was not just lighting up their homes and hearts, but it was also consuming itself. Each night, the candle would burn down a little bit more, and Leela knew that eventually, it would burn out completely. But Leela was not deterred. She knew that the candle was not meant to last forever, but its light and warmth could inspire others to carry on the spirit of kindness and compassion that it had brought to their village. So Leela continued to share the light of the candle, even as it burned down smaller and smaller. She knew that its light would continue to shine brightly, even after it was gone, as long as there were people in the world who were willing to share its warmth and love. Years passed, and Leela grew old. She knew that her time was coming to an end, but she was at peace, knowing that she had lived a life full of love and kindness. As she lay on her deathbed, surrounded by her loved ones, Leela whispered one last request to her community. "Take the candle," she said. "Let its light guide you and bring you comfort. And when it burns out, remember that its light lives on in your hearts." And so, the villagers took the candle, and they lit it every evening, passing it from home to home, each person taking a turn to share its light with their neighbors. And though the candle eventually burned out, the spirit of kindness and compassion that it had brought to the village lived on. The villagers continued to care for one another, always putting the needs of others before their own, and they knew that as long as they carried on this spirit, the light of the candle would shine brightly, even in the darkest of times. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there lived a powerful king who ruled over a vast kingdom. The king was feared and respected by all, for he was known to be wise and just. But despite his power and wealth, the king was not happy. He had a deep sense of loneliness and emptiness that could not be filled by his riches or his power. So the king decided to seek out a wise sage who could help him find the answers he sought. The sage lived in a small village at the edge of the kingdom, and the king traveled there, disguised as a commoner, so that he could seek the sage's advice without being recognized. When he arrived in the village, the king asked the villagers where he could find the wise sage. The villagers directed him to a small hut at the edge of the village, and the king made his way there. When he arrived, he found the sage sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by candles. The room was filled with a warm, gentle light, and the king felt a sense of peace wash over him. The sage welcomed the king and asked him what he sought. The king replied that he was seeking happiness, for despite his wealth and power, he felt a deep sense of emptiness. The sage listened to the king's words, and then he stood up and walked over to a nearby table. There, he picked up a small, flickering candle and held it out to the king. "This candle," he said, "is a symbol of the answer to your question. It lights others and consumes itself, just as happiness is found in serving others and forgetting oneself." The king was puzzled by the sage's words but took the candle and left the hut. As he walked back to his kingdom, he thought about what the sage had said. He realized that he had been so focused on his own power and wealth that he had forgotten the true purpose of a king, which was to serve his people. So the king began to change his ways. He started to spend more time with his people, listening to their needs and working to improve their lives. He used his wealth and power to build schools and hospitals, to improve infrastructure, and to provide for the poor and needy. As the king served his people, he found that the emptiness in his heart began to fill up. He felt a deep sense of joy and contentment, knowing that he was making a difference in the lives of those around him. And so, the king continued to serve his people, always remembering the lesson of the candle that the wise sage had taught him. He knew that true happiness could only be found in serving others and forgetting oneself, just as the candle lights others and consumes itself. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a group of people who were known for their kindness and generosity. They shared what they had, even if it was just a little, with anyone who needed it. The village was led by a wise elder who was loved and respected by all. He was known for his wisdom and compassion, and people would often come to him seeking advice or guidance. One day, a stranger came to the village. He was a traveler from a distant land, and he was tired and hungry. The people of the village welcomed him warmly, giving him food and shelter. The traveler was amazed by the kindness of the people and asked the elder how they could be so generous. The elder smiled and took the traveler to a small hut on the edge of the village. Inside the hut, there was a candle burning brightly, lighting up the small room with a warm glow. The elder picked up the candle and held it out to the traveler. "This candle," he said, "is a symbol of the way we live our lives. We try to light up the world around us, to make it a little brighter, even if it means consuming ourselves in the process." The traveler was touched by the elder's words and asked if he could stay in the village for a while to learn more about their way of life. The elder welcomed him, and the traveler stayed in the village for many weeks, learning from the people and experiencing their kindness and generosity firsthand. As the weeks turned into months, the traveler realized that he had found a new home in the village. He had never felt so welcomed and loved, and he knew that he had found a place where he belonged. Years went by, and the traveler became an integral part of the village. He worked alongside the people, sharing his skills and knowledge, and helping to make the village an even brighter place. When the elder passed away, the traveler was chosen to take his place as the leader of the village. He accepted the role with humility and grace, knowing that he had much to learn but also eager to continue the legacy of kindness and generosity that the elder had left behind. And so, the village continued to thrive, and the candle continued to burn brightly, a symbol of the love and kindness that the people shared with one another. For in this village, the people knew that the truest joy in life could be found in giving to others, just as the candle lights others and consumes itself. In a small town nestled in the countryside, there lived a woman named Emily who was known for her kind heart and gentle nature. Emily had a deep love for nature and spent much of her time tending to her garden, which was filled with flowers and plants of all kinds. One day, Emily received news that her dear friend, Sarah, had fallen ill and was unable to care for her young children. Emily immediately offered to take care of the children and welcomed them into her home with open arms. As Emily cared for the children, she noticed that they were unhappy and afraid. They had been through a lot of turmoil in their short lives, and they struggled to trust anyone. Emily knew that she needed to do something to make them feel loved and safe. One evening, as Emily sat with the children by the fireplace, she lit a candle and placed it on the mantel. The children watched as the candle flickered and danced, its warm glow filling the room with a sense of peace and comfort. Emily noticed how the children were entranced by the candle, and she knew that she had found a way to bring them some joy. She decided to teach them how to make their own candles, using the flowers and herbs from her garden. As the children worked together, mixing the wax and adding in the fragrant herbs, Emily watched as their faces lit up with excitement and wonder. They were creating something beautiful with their own hands, and they felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. The next day, Emily took the children to the local market to sell their candles. The people at the market were amazed by the children's creations, and they were eager to buy them. The children were overjoyed to see that their hard work had paid off, and they felt a sense of purpose and belonging. As the weeks went by, the children's confidence grew, and they began to open up to Emily and the people around them. They made new friends and found a sense of home in Emily's care. But Emily knew that she could not keep the children forever. She knew that they needed a permanent home where they could grow and thrive. And so, she worked tirelessly to find a loving family to adopt them. In the end, Emily found a family that was willing to take in all 3 children and give them the love and support that they needed. Emily watched as the children left her home, tears streaming down her face. But she knew that she had done what was best for them, and she was grateful for the time that she had been able to spend with them. As Emily returned to her quiet life in the countryside, she knew that she had been changed by her experience with the children. She had learned that even the smallest acts of kindness could have a profound impact on someone's life, just like a candle that lights others and consumes itself. And she knew that she would continue to spread love and joy wherever she went, just as she had with the children. In the heart of a bustling city, there stood a grand old cathedral, whose towering spires could be seen from miles away. The cathedral was known for its beautiful stained glass windows, intricate stone carvings, and soaring vaulted ceilings. But what most people did not know was the story of the cathedral's most treasured possession, a simple, unassuming candle. The candle had been given to the cathedral by an anonymous donor many years ago, and it had been burning continuously ever since. It was placed in a small alcove near the front of the church, and it burned with a steady, comforting glow, even during the darkest of times. The candle had become a symbol of hope and faith for the people of the city. Many would come to the cathedral to light their own candles from its flame, seeking comfort and solace in the midst of their struggles. One day, a young boy named Daniel came to the cathedral with his mother. His mother had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and he was struggling to come to terms with the fact that she would soon be gone. As they lit a candle from the flame of the cathedral's candle, Daniel's mother told him the story of how the candle had been burning for years, a symbol of hope and faith for those who were struggling. Daniel was amazed by the candle's longevity, and he asked his mother how it was possible for a candle to burn for so long. His mother explained that the candle was not just an ordinary candle, it was a special kind of candle that consumed itself as it burned. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel found himself returning to the cathedral more and more often, drawn to the comforting light of the candle. He would sit for hours in front of the candle, watching as it burned down slowly, its flame never wavering. One day, as Daniel sat in front of the candle, he had a sudden realization. The candle was not just a symbol of hope and faith, it was a symbol of selflessness. The candle was burning itself out, providing light and warmth for others, even as it consumed itself. Daniel knew that he wanted to live his life like the candle, selflessly giving of himself to help others. He began volunteering at a local charity organization, helping those in need and spreading love and kindness wherever he went. Years later, as an old man, Daniel returned to the cathedral to see the candle once again. He was amazed to see that it was still burning, its flame still steady and strong. As he sat in front of the candle, Daniel knew that he had lived his life in the same way, selflessly giving of himself to help others. And he knew that, like the candle, his life had made a difference in the world, bringing light and warmth to those around him. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a kind and generous woman named Maria. She was known throughout the village for her gentle nature and her willingness to help anyone in need. One day, Maria heard about a family who had fallen on hard times. They were struggling to make ends meet and had no food to eat. Without hesitation, Maria gathered up all the food she had in her own home and took it to the family. As she was leaving their home, Maria noticed that they had no candles to light their home during the long, dark nights. She knew that candles were expensive and that the family could not afford to buy them. So, Maria went home and lit a candle of her own. She placed it in her window, so that the family could see it from their own home. Every night, she would light the candle and leave it burning, so that the family could have a small glimmer of light to guide them through the darkness. As the days went by, more and more people in the village began to notice Maria's candle. They would stop by her home to admire its warm glow and to thank her for bringing light to their lives. One day, a young girl asked Maria why she was willing to sacrifice her own candle to help others. Maria smiled and said, "My dear, a candle that lights others and consumes itself is the most beautiful thing in the world. It reminds us that we must all do our part to bring light to the darkness." The young girl was inspired by Maria's words and decided to follow in her footsteps. She began lighting candles of her own and giving them to those in need, just as Maria had done. And so, Maria's simple act of kindness had sparked a chain reaction of generosity and compassion throughout the village. People began to look out for one another, to lend a helping hand when needed, and to share what they had with those who had less. Years later, as an old woman, Maria still lit her candle every night, and it still burned brightly in her window, a symbol of hope and love for all who saw it. And the people of the village remembered her as a shining example of what it means to truly live a life of kindness and selflessness. In a bustling city, there lived a young man named David. He was ambitious and driven, with a passion for helping others. David had always been inspired by the story of the candle that lights others and consumes itself, and he was determined to live his life in a way that would make a positive difference in the world. David worked hard every day, building his career and striving to achieve his goals. But he never forgot the importance of giving back to his community. He volunteered at local shelters, organized fundraisers for charities, and mentored young people who were struggling to find their way in the world. Despite his busy schedule, David always made time for his family and friends. He was known for his kind heart and his willingness to listen to others. He was a true light in the lives of those around him. As time went by, David's candle burned brightly, but he began to feel the toll of his efforts. He was exhausted, and his health began to suffer. But even as he struggled, David refused to give up. He knew that his work was important, and he was determined to keep going. One day, David collapsed from exhaustion. He was rushed to the hospital, where the doctors told him that he needed to rest and take care of himself. But David refused to listen. He was more concerned with the needs of others than with his own health. Despite the warnings of his doctors, David continued to work tirelessly, never pausing to rest or take care of himself. And as he poured more and more of himself into his work, his candle began to flicker and fade. In the end, David's candle burned out completely. His family and friends were devastated by his loss, but they knew that his legacy would live on. David had touched the lives of so many people, and he had shown them the importance of living a life of service and compassion. And so, David's story became a reminder of the power of one candle to light the lives of others, but also the importance of taking care of oneself, so that one can continue to shine brightly and make a difference in the world. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a kind and gentle old woman named May. She was known throughout the village for her wisdom, her compassion, and her unwavering spirit. May had lived a long and full life, but as she grew older, she began to feel the weight of her years. She knew that her time on this earth was growing short, and she worried about what would happen to her beloved village after she was gone. But May was not one to give up easily. She knew that there was still work to be done, and she was determined to do all that she could to help the people she loved. And so, May set to work. She visited every family in the village, offering words of wisdom and encouragement, and she worked tirelessly to ensure that the village remained strong and vibrant. Despite her age, May was tireless in her efforts. She worked from sunrise to sunset, never pausing to rest or take a break. And as she poured more and more of herself into her work, her candle began to flicker and fade. But May refused to give up. She knew that her work was important, and she was determined to keep going, even if it meant sacrificing herself in the process. And so, May continued to work, even as her candle grew dimmer and dimmer. She never complained or asked for help, always putting the needs of others before her own. Finally, one day, May's candle burned out completely. The village mourned her passing, but they also celebrated the incredible life that she had lived. May had been a beacon of hope and light for her community, and her legacy lived on long after she was gone. Her story became a reminder of the importance of selflessness and sacrifice, and of the incredible power of one candle to light the lives of others. Once upon a time, in a distant land, there lived a young girl named Amara. She was a kind and loving girl, who always had a smile on her face and a kind word for everyone she met. Despite the hardships she faced in her life, Amara remained steadfast in her faith and her commitment to helping others. Amara lived in a small village at the foot of a great mountain. The village was poor, and life was hard, but Amara never let that get her down. She spent her days gathering firewood and helping her mother with the household chores, and her evenings were spent reading by the light of a small candle. As Amara grew older, she began to notice the struggles of those around her. She saw families who were hungry and cold, and she knew that she had to do something to help. And so, Amara started to share her small candle with others. At first, she would lend her candle to her neighbors, so they could read or do their work at night. But as the winter grew colder, Amara began to share her candle with those who had no heat or light of their own. She would visit the homes of the elderly and the sick, bringing warmth and comfort with her small candle. As Amara shared her candle with others, she began to notice something remarkable. The more she gave, the brighter her own candle burned. It was as if the act of sharing had somehow made her candle more powerful, more enduring. And so, Amara continued to share her candle, even as it burned lower and lower. She knew that her time on this earth was limited, but she also knew that the light she had shared with others would live on long after she was gone. One day, as the winter was drawing to a close, Amara's candle burned out completely. The village mourned her passing, but they also celebrated the incredible life that she had lived. Amara had been a beacon of hope and light for her community, and her legacy lived on in the hearts of those she had touched. Years went by, and the village grew and prospered. But through it all, the memory of Amara and her small candle lived on. Her story became a reminder of the incredible power of one candle to light the lives of others, and of the importance of giving selflessly and with an open heart. In another time and place, there was a man named Adam. He was a successful businessman, with a beautiful home, a loving family, and all the material possessions one could desire. But despite his many blessings, Adam felt empty inside. He knew that something was missing from his life, but he didn't know what. One day, Adam stumbled upon a small candle in an old antique shop. It was a plain and unremarkable thing, but there was something about the way it flickered that caught his eye. He decided to buy the candle, and brought it home with him. As the days and weeks passed, Adam found himself drawn to the small flame of the candle. He would spend hours watching it dance and flicker, mesmerized by its beauty. And as he watched, he began to realize that the candle was teaching him something important. Adam saw that the candle burned brightly, not for its own sake, but to light the way for others. And as it burned, the candle consumed itself, giving of itself so that others could benefit. And Adam realized that this was the key to his own happiness, to live a life of service and sacrifice, to give of himself so that others might benefit. And so, Adam began to change his ways. He started to give more generously to charity, and to volunteer his time and resources to those in need. And as he did so, he found that his own life grew brighter and more fulfilling. The more he gave, the more he received in return. Years went by, and Adam became known throughout the community for his kindness and generosity. He had learned the lesson of the candle, and had applied it to his own life. And though he was not perfect, and made mistakes along the way, he knew that he was on the right path. In the end, when Adam passed away, his family and friends gathered to mourn his passing, but also to celebrate the incredible life he had lived. He had been a candle in the darkness, lighting the way for others and giving of himself until the very end. And as they remembered him, they knew that his legacy would live on, not in the things he had owned or accomplished, but in the lives he had touched and the light he had shared. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the mountains, there was a kind and gentle woman named May. She lived a simple life, spending her days working in her garden and taking care of her family. Despite her modest means, May was always willing to help her neighbors in any way she could. One day, a terrible storm hit the village, and the power went out. May's neighbors were left in the dark, with no way to see or cook their meals. But May had a small candle, and she used it to light her own home and cook food for her family. As the night wore on, May's neighbors came knocking on her door, asking for help. They were cold and hungry, and they had no way to light their own homes. Without hesitation, May invited them in and shared her candle with them. She lit their homes and cooked them food, and they all huddled together, warmed by the gentle glow of the candle. But as the night wore on, the candle began to burn down. May knew that if she kept sharing it with her neighbors, it would soon go out, leaving them all in darkness once again. She was faced with a difficult decision. Should she keep sharing the candle, even if it meant sacrificing her own light? In the end, May knew what she had to do. She carefully removed a small piece of wax from the bottom of the candle, and used it to fashion a makeshift wick. She lit the wick, and handed the candle to her neighbors, telling them to pass it on to someone else in need once their own homes were lit. And so, the candle went from house to house, spreading light and warmth throughout the village. And though May's own home was left in darkness, she knew that the light she had shared would continue to burn bright. In the weeks and months that followed, May became known throughout the village as a true hero. Her selflessness and kindness had brought the community together in a way they had never experienced before. And though May had given up her own light for the sake of others, she found that her life had never been brighter. For in giving of herself, she had received the greatest gift of all, the love and gratitude of her neighbors. In a small village in the heart of the countryside, there lived an old man named Hiroshi. He was known throughout the village for his kindness and generosity, always willing to lend a hand to anyone in need. One day, Hiroshi came upon a small bird lying on the ground, unable to fly. The bird's wing was broken, and it was clear that it needed help. Without hesitation, Hiroshi picked up the bird and took it home. For weeks, Hiroshi cared for the bird, feeding it and nursing it back to health. And though the bird was unable to fly, it was happy and content in Hiroshi's care. As the days passed, Hiroshi began to notice something strange. The candle he kept on his windowsill was burning down much faster than usual. At first, he thought it was just a coincidence, but soon he realized that the candle was burning faster every day. At last, he understood what was happening. The bird was using the heat from the candle to warm itself, and in doing so, it was causing the candle to burn down faster. Hiroshi was faced with a difficult decision. He knew that if he continued to keep the bird, his candle would soon burn out. But he also knew that he could not simply abandon the bird, now that it had grown so attached to him. In the end, Hiroshi decided to make a sacrifice. He would continue to care for the bird, even if it meant sacrificing his own light. He bought more candles, and lit them all around his home, so that he could continue to care for the bird and keep it warm. And so, the days passed, and the candle burned down faster and faster. But Hiroshi didn't mind. He was content knowing that he was helping a creature in need, and that his small sacrifice was making a big difference in the bird's life. Eventually, the bird's wing healed, and it was able to fly once again. Hiroshi was overjoyed, knowing that he had played a small part in the bird's recovery. And though he had sacrificed his own light to care for the bird, he knew that the love and kindness he had shown had illuminated his life in ways he could never have imagined. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a wise old monk named Jiro. Jiro was respected throughout the village for his wisdom and his selflessness. He had devoted his life to helping others and spreading kindness wherever he went. One day, a young boy came to Jiro seeking his guidance. The boy was troubled and sad, and he didn't know what to do. He had been given a candle by his mother, and she had told him to light it whenever he needed guidance or comfort. But now, the candle was burning down, and the boy didn't want it to go out. Jiro listened to the boy's story, and he smiled. He knew just what to do. He took the candle from the boy and lit another candle from its flame. Then, he gave the second candle to the boy, saying, "This candle will light others, but it will consume itself. And in doing so, it will bring light and warmth to many." The boy was confused, but Jiro explained that the candle was a symbol of selflessness. It gave itself to others, even as it consumed itself, just as Jiro had given so much of himself to help others. The boy listened to Jiro's words, and he understood. He took the candle and went out into the village, sharing its light with everyone he met. He lit candles in the windows of the elderly, and he lit candles in the homes of the sick. Everywhere he went, he spread light and warmth. And as he did so, the candle burned down faster and faster. But the boy didn't mind. He knew that he was making a difference in the lives of others, and that his small sacrifice was worth it. Years later, the boy grew up to become a wise and selfless man, just like Jiro. He continued to share his light with others, even as he consumed himself in doing so. And though his light eventually went out, he left behind a legacy of kindness and compassion that would continue to shine on for generations to come. In a small town on the outskirts of a vast and sprawling city, there lived a young woman named Eliza. She was a quiet and reserved person, but she had a heart of gold. She worked hard at her job, and she always did her best to help those around her. One day, Eliza came across a group of homeless people huddled together under a bridge. They were cold and hungry, and they had nothing to keep them warm. Eliza felt a pang of sadness in her heart as she looked at them, and she knew she had to do something to help. She went back to her apartment and searched through her belongings until she found a candle. It was a simple white candle, nothing special, but Eliza knew that it could bring warmth and light to those in need. She went back to the bridge and lit the candle, placing it in the center of the group. The flame flickered in the cold breeze, casting a warm and comforting glow over the huddled figures. As she watched the candle burn down, Eliza realized something. The candle was like her. It was small and simple, but it had the power to bring light and warmth to others. And in doing so, it consumed itself. From that day on, Eliza dedicated herself to helping those in need. She volunteered at soup kitchens and homeless shelters, and she gave whatever she could to those who needed it most. She continued to light candles wherever she went, spreading warmth and comfort to those who needed it most. Years passed, and Eliza grew old. Her health began to decline, and she knew that her time was coming to an end. But she was not afraid. She knew that she had lived a good life, and that she had made a difference in the world. She had brought light and warmth to others, just like the candle that she had lit so many years ago. As she lay on her deathbed, surrounded by friends and loved ones, Eliza closed her eyes and smiled. She knew that her flame was burning down, but she also knew that the light she had brought to the world would continue to shine on, long after she was gone. In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, there was a small village of indigenous people who lived in harmony with the land. They were a humble and selfless people, always willing to help others in need. One day, a great fire broke out in the forest, threatening to destroy everything in its path. The villagers knew that they had to act quickly to contain the blaze before it consumed their homes and everything they held dear. They worked tirelessly, fighting the flames with buckets of water and shovels of dirt. But it was no use. The fire raged on, spreading rapidly and burning everything in its path. Just when all hope seemed lost, a young girl named Maria stepped forward. She held a single candle in her hand, and she lit it with a small flame from her own torch. The villagers looked on in confusion, wondering what good a single candle could do against the inferno that was threatening to destroy them all. But as Maria walked towards the edge of the fire, something remarkable happened. The flame of the candle grew brighter and brighter, casting a warm and comforting glow over the trees and the people below. The villagers watched in awe as the fire began to recede, pulled back by the gentle light of the candle. It was as if the fire was drawn to the light, and as it moved away, the villagers were able to contain the blaze and eventually extinguish it completely. The people of the village were amazed by Maria's courage and the power of her candle. They realized that sometimes, it is not the strength of our weapons or the size of our armies that can make the difference, but rather the power of a single light in the darkness. From that day on, the villagers looked upon Maria with newfound respect and admiration. She became a symbol of hope and courage, and her C&L. Remained a reminder of the power that we all hold within us to make a difference in the world. As for Maria, she continued to live a simple life, always willing to help others and share her light with those who needed it most. And though the candle eventually burned down to nothing, its light continued to shine on, lighting the way for generations to come. In a small town nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, there lived an old woman named Anna. She had lived a long and fulfilling life, but as she grew older, she became increasingly aware of her own mortality. One day, she decided to go to the local church to light a candle and say a prayer. As she knelt before the altar, she noticed that the candle she had lit was burning much faster than the others. She watched as the flame consumed the wax, leaving behind nothing but a small pile of ash. As Anna watched the candle burn, she began to think about her own life. She realized that just like the candle, she too had been burning brightly, but that her time was running out. Determined to make the most of the time she had left, Anna set out to do something special for the people in her town. She spent her days volunteering at the local hospital, reading to the sick and comforting the dying. She visited the elderly in their homes, bringing them food and companionship. She helped the poor and the needy, doing whatever she could to ease their burden. The people of the town noticed the change in Anna. They marveled at her boundless energy and her unwavering dedication to helping others. They saw the way she lit up the lives of everyone she touched, and they were inspired by her selflessness. As the days turned into weeks, Anna continued to give of herself, never once thinking of her own needs or desires. And yet, despite the many hours she spent in service to others, she never seemed to tire or slow down. Finally, after several months of tireless work, Anna's body began to fail. She became weak and frail, and it was clear that her time on earth was coming to an end. As she lay on her deathbed, surrounded by loved ones, Anna looked up and saw the candle she had lit in the church so many months before. It was still burning, its flame flickering in the darkness. With a smile on her face, Anna realized that she had been like that candle, burning brightly, but slowly consuming herself in the process. And yet, like the candle, she had brought light into the lives of others, and that was all that truly mattered. As she closed her eyes for the final time, Anna knew that her light would continue to shine on, lighting the way for those who came after her. In a small village nestled in the mountains, there lived a young boy named Liang. He was a bright and curious child, always eager to learn and explore. One day, as he was walking through the village, he noticed an old man sitting on the side of the road, staring off into the distance. Curious, Liang approached the old man and asked him what he was looking at. The old man smiled and said, "I'm looking at the future, my boy." Liang was puzzled. "How can you look at the future?" he asked. The old man replied, "By lighting a candle and watching it burn." Liang didn't understand, but he was intrigued. He asked the old man to explain, and the old man began to tell him a story. Many years ago, he said, there was a great king who ruled over a vast kingdom. He was a wise and just king, loved by his people. One day, he decided to hold a grand festival in honor of his birthday. He invited all the people of the kingdom to come and celebrate with him. At the festival, the king lit a candle and placed it in the center of a large table. He said, "This candle represents the future of our kingdom. As long as it burns brightly, our kingdom will prosper and thrive. But if it goes out, our kingdom will fall into darkness." The people were amazed and impressed by the king's words. They watched as the candle burned, its flame dancing in the darkness. But as the night wore on, they noticed that the flame was growing smaller and weaker. They began to worry and wonder if the king's words were true. Suddenly, a young boy stepped forward from the crowd. He took a deep breath and blew out the candle. The people gasped in shock and horror, but the boy just smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll light another one." And so he did. He lit another candle and placed it in the center of the table. This time, the flame burned brighter and stronger than before. The people cheered and applauded, and the king smiled and nodded in approval. From that day forward, the young boy became known as the candle lighter. Whenever the kingdom faced a crisis or a challenge, he would light a candle and bring hope to the people. He spent his life lighting candles and inspiring others to do the same. The old man paused and looked at Liang. "You see, my boy," he said, "the candle lighter didn't just light candles. He lit other people's candles as well. He helped him to see the light within themselves and to share it with others. He didn't just consume himself in the process, he ignited the flames of others and created a brighter future for all." Liang listened to the old man's story with wonder and awe. He realized that he too could be a candle lighter, that he too could help others to see the light and share it with the world. And so he set out to do just that. He went through the village, lighting candles and encouraging others to do the same. He showed them that even a small flame could make a big difference, and that by lighting others' candles, they could create a brighter future for all. In time, Liang became known as the candle lighter of the village. People came from far and wide to hear his stories and to see his candles burn. He inspired them to believe in themselves and in the power of their own light. And as he grew older, Liang knew that his time was drawing near. But he didn't worry, for he knew that his light would continue to burn on, lighting the way for others long after he was gone.